The moment between Chris Fletcher and Marsau quickly turned from a simple conversation into one of the most intense and revealing exchanges seen in a long time. What started as a casual walkthrough of a workspace slowly built into something deeper, something layered with tension, ego, and unresolved issues that had clearly been sitting under the surface for a while. The setting itself felt calm, almost too calm, with Chris explaining the layout, talking about offices, glass features, and plans to complete the space. On the surface, everything looked like business as usual, but underneath that calm tone, there was something waiting to come out. As Chris walked Marcel through the space, he explained that some projects take priority over others. The ones he is paying for come first, while others will be completed later. This statement alone already hinted at a bigger issue about time, responsibility, and how business is handled. It showed a clear mindset. Focus on what needs to be done now and handle the rest step by step. But even in that moment, there was a slight tension building, especially when Marcel started asking questions that did not feel casual anymore. His tone slowly shifted from friendly curiosity to something more pointed. When the conversation turned toward the real estate license issue, everything changed. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Marsau brought it up in a way that did not feel supportive. Instead, it felt like he came in already knowing what he wanted to say. He mentioned hearing about the situation and placed it in a context that made it seem like it was something Chris should have personally shared with him. That is where the real conflict began. Chris did not deny the situation. He was open about it. He clearly stated that his license had been revoked, but he also explained that it was not permanent. He said he had legal help working on it and compared it to losing a job temporarily and then coming back. His tone was calm, controlled, and honest. There was no panic in his voice. Instead, there was acceptance and focus on fixing the issue. That alone showed a level of maturity in how he handled the situation. But Marcel did not stop there. He took the conversation in a direction that made it feel less about concern and more about confrontation. He brought up a past conversation about possibly going into business together. According to him, that past discussion meant Chris should have informed him about the license issue. This is where things started to feel off. Because when you really think about it, a single conversation from a year ago does not create an obligation. Business does not work like that. Real business requires follow-ups, planning, agreements, and clear communication over time. Chris quickly addressed that point. He made it clear that there was no ongoing business relationship. There were no recent talks, no active plans, and no steps taken to move forward. It was just a conversation from the past that never turned into anything real. His response was direct and logical. He pointed out that if someone is serious about doing business, they do not disappear for a year and then suddenly come back with expectations. This is where Chris's energy began to change. Up until that point, he had been calm and measured. But now he started to stand his ground more firmly. He refused to accept the idea that he owed Marsau an explanation. He made it clear that his personal and business matters are not something he needs to announce to everyone, especially not someone who is not actively involved in his work. Marsau, on the other hand, kept pushing. He tried to frame the situation as something bigger, talking about responsibility, community image, and how actions affect others. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, but in this context, it felt more like a way to justify his questioning rather than genuine concern. It felt like he was trying to take control of the narrative and position himself as someone who had the right to demand answers. That is when Chris delivered one of the strongest responses in the entire exchange. He turned the conversation back on Marsau by asking about lawsuits. It was a sharp and unexpected move. It shifted the power in the conversation immediately. Instead of being on the defensive, Chris put Marsau in a position where he had to answer questions about his own situation. The impact of that moment was clear. It exposed a double standard. If Marsau expected transparency from Chris, then the same standard should apply to him. But when that question was asked, the energy changed. There was hesitation, and the confidence that Marsau had at the beginning started to fade. Chris did not raise his voice, but his words carried weight. He was not just responding, he was challenging the logic behind the entire confrontation. As the conversation continued, Chris made it even clearer that there was no real business relationship between them. He emphasized that nothing had been signed, no agreements had been made, and no recent discussions had taken place. Without those things, there is no obligation. It is simple and straightforward. This point alone broke down the entire argument that Marsau was trying to build. Another key moment came when Chris addressed the idea of public responsibility. Marsau tried to suggest that Chris's license was not just a personal matter, but something that affects the community. While that may be true in a general sense, Chris responded in a way that brought the focus back to reality. He acknowledged his role, but made it clear that he already understands his responsibilities. He did not need to be lectured about it, especially not in a confrontational way. Then came the line that truly defined the moment. Chris stated that his name carries weight in the community. This was not said out of arrogance, but as a statement of fact and confidence. It was a reminder that his reputation is built on more than just one situation. It showed that he knows his value and is not willing to let someone else question it without reason. That statement seemed to hit Marsau the hardest. For the first time, he appeared taken off guard. The control he had at the start of the conversation was gone. Chris had completely shifted the dynamic. What began as an attempt to question him turned into a moment where he stood firm and redefined the entire situation. Looking at the bigger picture, this moment was not just about a license or a past business conversation. It was about respect, boundaries, and how people handle situations when they feel challenged. Chris showed that being calm does not mean being weak. When pushed, he responded with clarity and strength. He did not allow the conversation to be twisted or turned against him. At the same time, this situation also highlighted a pattern in how certain conversations are approached. Sometimes people bring up issues not to help, but to gain an advantage or create a moment. And when that happens, the response matters. Chris's response showed that staying grounded and focused can completely change the outcome. Another important aspect of this exchange is how it reflects real-life situations. In business and personal relationships, expectations need to be clear. Assumptions can lead to conflict. If there is no agreement, no follow-up, and no active communication, then there is no obligation. This is something many people can relate to. As the conversation came to an end, it was clear who had control. Chris did not need to raise his voice or become aggressive. His words were enough. He addressed every point, challenged every assumption, and made his position clear. Marsau, on the other hand, had to adjust his approach as the conversation moved forward. In the end, this moment stands out because of how it unfolded. It started with a simple discussion, but revealed deeper issues about trust, communication, and respect. It showed how quickly things can change when one person decides to question another without a solid foundation. The situation also leaves room for reflection. Was this conversation necessary? Could it have been handled differently? Possibly. But what cannot be ignored is how it played out. It showed two different approaches, two different mindsets, and how those differences can lead to conflict. As things move forward, it will be interesting to see how this affects future interactions. Moments like this do not just end when the conversation is over. They leave an impact. They shape how people see each other and how they choose to interact in the future. What is clear is that this was not just a random exchange. It was a moment that revealed more than it seemed at first. It showed confidence, tension, and the importance of standing firm when faced with pressure. And in that moment, Chris made it clear that he is not someone who will be easily challenged or questioned without a response.